If you could just take any piece of paper and write down the most beautiful life you could ever imagine, whatever it is, whatever life you truly want to live, that's how we do our farming.
If you have like a farming gene in you and you love doing it, you can do anything.
We have people that are very self-reliant and resilient, and we don't sit around and wait for everybody to tell us how to do things. We kind of try to figure it out and do it on our own.
When I was a banker, 5 o'clock came, stress is done, I'm out. And now it never ends. As farmers, we're rolling the dice. There's significant risk. It's a different type of stress, but it's a good stress.
We struck out across the country in search of the quintessential American farm, and boy, did we find it. From Maine to Alaska, the seasons may be different, but the farmers, they share a deep love of the land, and they're committed to building a sustainable future for all of the farms across America, and for all of us.
At the time our kids were young, and I really wanted them to learn that food doesn't come from the supermarket.
There is actually a big difference between something that's grown in a healthy soil and harvested at the peak of its freshness, as opposed to something you get from the grocery store.
The product you may receive from a traditional wholesaler likely was harvested anywhere from 8 days to 3 months ago.
What a lot of people don't know is when you cut a plant at the farm level and then you transport it, once it's been cut and harvested, you lose about 10% of the nutrition every day that it travels.
Federico's solution is hydroponic farming in Houston. While up in West Virginia, the National Guard is building resilience by keeping it local.
If you can grow your food close to where it's going to be consumed, you eliminate a lot of transportation. You eliminate a lot of fossil fuels being burned to get it to market.
If we were only growing and producing more food for our own needs, it would keep more dollars in the state, it would employ more people, the food would be fresher.
One of the things that we saw in West Virginia, particularly during this pandemic, just how many people are right on the edge of food insecurity. And we had a tremendous uptick in the number of people that needed food assistance.
And for states like West Virginia and Alaska, the pandemic only amplified challenges they'd already known.
Food security not only matters, but is actually vital to building resilient communities. If we had a shipment that's late, within like 3 days' time, the shelves will be like barren.
We get a barge from Seattle. That takes a minimum of a week, and it's expensive. But I would say, take any major city, what would happen when truckers don't drive trucks? You have food insecurity.
The hardest part about my job is convincing people that hunger is actually real. If you haven't experienced it or if you haven't been there, then it's really hard to believe that we're in the richest country in the world and that we have people that have to choose between paying rent and buying food.
Innovation to me is a very elegant solution to difficult problems.
We do nothing more than just buy more of what we produce locally. We help each other, we help our neighbors, we create opportunities.
Hyper-local, to be doing everything completely local, building a community that will sustain itself.
For Interfaith Food Shuttle in Raleigh, North Carolina, that means community learning gardens where neighbors are invited to grow their own food.
It has just become a huge passion of mine. I love to share my harvest, so I share some with my family, I share some with my friends, coworkers, everybody.
Sharing food as a community is a really important tradition to me, and I think that you learn so much from other people around sharing a meal.
And behind every good meal is a good chef with a whole lot of love to go around.
I always love cooking. My aunt inspired me. She couldn't read or write, but she could cook.
Do you remember any recipes she taught you or anything you really love to eat of hers?
Fried chicken and gravy with grits.
How you frying the chicken though?
Trying to get my family secrets.
This is a little farmhouse charcuterie board with our tomatoes and freshly made mozzarella.
That's incredible. That's one of the best things I've ever eaten.
Isn't that good?
I'm not exaggerating.
That's really nice. That's really kind of you.
You kind of have to like take a moment with this kind of meal where you just are like,
Yeah.
I've been to church now.
Connecting with the people who eat our food is one of the most amazing things. We're nourishing so many people. I get so much joy and feelings of abundance.
It's very important, I think, to know who's producing your food and where it's coming from. I'm the first guy to say, yeah, come over here, let's have a beer and talk about it, you know?
We had a beer with Mike, and we realized these farmers, they are passionate about the food they produce.
You can't replace meat with vegetables. They're two totally different things.
That's the true Texan.
It's just the truth. That's a science. It's a science.
What's also a science is that cows release a whole lot of methane into the atmosphere, and industrial-scale farming can be hard on the land. But the good news is farmers like Travis, they've got a plan.
Regenerative agriculture. First of all, we have to understand that it's a principle. It means a systems approach to managing a landscape in a holistic way.
Our goal is to always be improving the land. We think that properly managing the livestock is the best way for us to improve the biodiversity and the health of the whole ecosystem.
And the time to do it is now for J.Y. Ferry & Son ranchers who have stewarded thousands of acres of land along the Great Salt Lake for over 120 years.
They're not making any more land, and in the West, they're not making any more water. And so you need to take what you have and improve upon it, become more efficient, and conserve and protect it.
Hey, water is precious. You graze the ground down, the water just runs off. But if you have those deep-rooted grasses, then the water goes down, it can follow the roots down.
And my motto has always been that the buckaroos go out and look at the cattle and could care less about the grass. The rancher goes and looks at the grass. And by looking at the grass, he can tell you what the cattle are doing. But you look at the grass first.
If you start managing grasslands in a different way, you can store tremendous amounts of carbon.
Every acre of grass takes 3,500 pounds of atmospheric carbon and puts it right into the ground a year. 72 tons of atmospheric carbon every year that I put down back into the ground where it belongs.
And Texas-based Grassroots Carbon pays farmers to do just what Mike at Cattlemen Point Farm is doing: capture carbon through planned grazing of livestock.
There's an enormous amount of land available for carbon storage. 40% of the United States is being used for livestock management.
We want that 40% of the U.S. landmass that is devoted to agriculture to be working regeneratively.
Grasses without animals don't work. If you keep animals on grass, it will kill it. But if you bring animals on the grass and then take them away, it's like you're starting spring over.
When they eat the top off of this plant, some of the roots die back in the soil, which starts building the carbon.
They're typically just taking the top third or so, and that allows for the grasses to recover very quickly.
Basic photosynthesis with a little help from our animal friends.
My purpose here is to make sure the animals have their best life. The pigs, they're rooting around out there, like living their best life, and the turkeys are out there eating the bugs and they have the sunshine.
People that become vegans and vegetarians because they think, well, I can't eat animals because of the way that they're raised. Well, what if we raise them in a way that actually heals the planet?
I mean, you can debate about the causes of climate change, but the reality is it is happening.
Doug is seeing it in his research with the USDA in Appalachia. And meanwhile, down in Houston,
I mean, I was looking at all kinds of environmental technologies and renewables, but the NASA folks says, hey, our definition of sustainability for astronauts is if they die, it's not very sustainable. And I was like, wow, that's pretty good definition. So we got to find a way to be not just good for the planet, but keep people alive.
which brings us back to food and how we grow it.
Sustainability is really kind of a key component of agriculture in general, but for us, it ensures that we've got years and years to come.
Every time we put something in the ground that disturbs the soil, and we break that top layer, that gives an opportunity for the wind to come in and blow our topsoil away. The more we impact it with animals and then move on and let the land rest, there is ability for the land to heal itself.
You'll see that the fields are rotated. That gives that piece of property there a chance to kind of refertilize and kind of heal, and that way, the next time it's ready to be planted, the soil is just that much richer.
A lot of people, I think, they try to just manage their gardens too much, and they're like, need to spray pesticides or grow, perfectly straight lines and everything, but plants don't, they're fine. Plants know what to do.
It's this approach of managing it through natural means rather than just going out and dumping a bunch of chemical. Because when you spray, you kill everything. You're killing the bad vegetation, but you're also killing all the good vegetation.
And we're trying to really promote a biodiverse ecosystem. So yeah, I'll let my grass get a little bit bigger, but we're supporting a bigger ecosystem than just one type of animal, We're letting everything be everything.
It's a loop. It's a continuous loop. The bees pollinate the flowers that make the strawberries, plants grow. The leaves, when they die in the fall, we'll plow them under, which makes fertilizer, and get ready for the spring again, and everything comes back up to life.
I've been lucky enough to steward this land for the amount of time I'm here. If someone gave you the tools, you would do the same. You can't walk the land and not want to do something to make it better.
At the end of the day, when you look at a crop of calves or a wheat field or a cornfield, some things you just can't buy with money, but it's not about the money.
On a very basic level, that's really what all humans want, is they want to create something.
It's more than just a business. It's a lifestyle, and you get a connection to the land, and it becomes part of you as far as your heritage, as far as your legacy, as far as what your life is all about.
Every time I come out here, something's better. Nature's beautiful in that she provides so much. You just have to have the vision to see it.
I want people to feel connected to the land. I always say the land is healing. It's not our land, it's everybody's.
You know, with a little bit of work, you can transform anything. Just get out there and just get your hands dirty and grow something.